All right, and we are back, minus one puppy. So we are moving on to 2015. And the first game on the list is something that I wanted to mention. It's Resident Evil Revelations 2. If you remember, I hadn't played the first one because it was 3DS only. This is now next gen or current gen. PS4, I believe, and Xbox One. It's kind of returned to form to the series. Not as actiony, a little bit more survival horror, but still plenty of action. What's cool about this is they did do the episodic thing, which was actually done pretty well. I don't know if I like that format yet or not, but in this case, it was done well, and I liked it. And I think it was released every week, so that is a good timeline instead of monthly. Or
Yeah.
That's about it for that one.
Okay. Next on the list was one of mine. I have Ori and the Blind Forest on here. This is a 2D platformer, although it's more of a Metroid game than it is a platformer. It just, I guess you would call it a platformer because there's not a lot of combat.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what can I say? This game is really good. It's not an indie game by any means because it's made by Microsoft,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of got that look and feel to it. Just not much else I really want to say. I feel like I should talk about it for longer because of how much I like this game, and it's a lot. But yeah, it's just a really good 2D style Metroid game that's more about exploration than combat, but I guess that's kind of true of Metroid in general. Really, it's mostly, there's some really good boss fights, so I don't want to discount the combat completely, but man, really good game. Next one on the list is Mario Party 10, which is the Wii U Mario Party, aka the what even happened in the pitch meeting here.
This
Mario
is just
Party.
worth mentioning. Unlike the other ones where I said, well, this game struggled because it was on the Wii U and nobody played it. This game just struggled.
They lost track of what people like about Mario Party with this one.
They started to think people only cared about the mini games in Mario Party, which is a huge importance of it. But it's equally as important. Literally, it should be 50-50 to the board game mechanic.
Yeah.
And they completely abandoned the board game, basically, in this one. The board game was, you don't have your own characters, you all move together on one train. Horrible. Unfortunately.
Next on the list, Bloodborne. Really popular game.
My introduction to the From Software games for me, I mean, I knew of them, but my first in the series that I played, also advantage of me getting my PS4 because it was exclusive, so this is one of the games that benefited from me having that system. I liked it a lot. What I mentioned earlier, I think about, I can't remember. Oh, Evil Within. Stopping and coming back. That happened in this game to no fault of the game. It's hard, like all of their games. And I moved on to something else and came back and was far enough where I had to just basically start from scratch again because I was lost. I did that a couple more times and got very far, but I was so far the last time I got back into it that I didn't know where the heck I was going. So I never did finish it, unfortunately, but that's not to the game's fault. It was a very good game.
Next up on the list, next couple are mine. Axiom Verge, which is this one is an indie Metroid game. This is very much like, we're not even trying to pretend it's not a Metroid game. Yeah. It looks and feels like Super Metroid.
Which
and
is not a bad
that's,
thing.
not an insult. So, great game. Not much else to say about it. Next one on the list is Bastion, which is maybe not Supermassive's first game, the developer Supermassive, but this is the one that kind of made them bigger. It's just a really good game. It's like an isometric adventure game. I think the most notable thing about this was it had a narrator that was dynamic. Like, the narrator would talk about what you were literally doing on the screen.
Like Seaman? Actually, that wasn't.
Yeah, it was a really cool game and brought Supermassive to everyone's attention, which is a good thing because Supermassive has made good games since then as well. So after that, we have The Witcher 3, which is
No meme. I mean,
no
I know it's
introduction
coming out
needed.
soon on Switch, but this is actually when the game did come out.
Yeah, no introduction needed for this game. I mean, most people look back on this as just like, man, what a great game. And like, there's a reason why people talk about CD Projekt Red is like, man, we can't wait till they make their next game because they haven't made a game since then. That's why everyone's looking forward to Cyberpunk.
Well, and this is, to me, if I loop in Dragon Age Progression and Skyrim, at least Skyrim, this is a better Skyrim to me. It's not as big of a world, I don't think, but it's definitely as big of a game. And this does side quests better than Dragon Age Inquisition did. There's
Also-
a lot of them, but
Also, much like Final Fantasy did in the PlayStation 1 era, they had a card game
yeah,
that was so good that it became a
Yeah.
standalone game. You can buy
yeah, it was
Gwent.
cool. Yep.
Um,
And really, the only other thing I have to say about it is it's another game which I'm not typically this person. I know you've brought it up a bit, but I've mentioned it a few times now in the past couple of years. It was a game I stopped playing after a long time of playing, and went back to several times. I usually like to start and finish games. I am usually pretty good about it, but in these couple of years I wasn't. And this game I actually just beat this year because of how many times I start and finish it. I got basically 95% done a few times, or a percentage here and there, and then I finally sat down and finished it. But it's a good game.
after that, we have Splatoon. I wanted this on the list. I really like Splatoon and Splatoon 2. This is notable just because it's the first one. It's
Well, and after your Titanfall,
that's
there's no campaign really.
there is a campaign in this.
Is
game.
it really a true campaign, or is it more...
It's not nearly as long as the Splatoon 2 campaign
Oh,
is, because it's only 5 chapters and they're not long. And even the Splatoon 2 one, although it's kind of getting off topic to talk about it, is not very super long. But like shooter campaigns typically aren't like 10 plus hours anyway.
Well, and I'm just thinking, maybe I thought that because I think of Titanfall.
It's short, but it exists.
I think of in Titanfall's case, I knew that was the game, and I just wanted to play it competitively, and that's all I was going to do. And I would have thought the same about this, where I didn't really need a campaign because it's more about the multiplayer. But that's changed.
For Splatoon, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
Batman Arkham Knight is next on the list.
that game, that fights my sequel rule a little bit because in the regards of I said the best game of the series can upset. Arkham City is very good, but this game, I don't think it does anything worse than Arkham City. So I would almost everything makes me want to edge this over Arkham City, but I don't. And I don't really have a good explanation for why. It's well rounded. It's the biggest game. It's the best graphics because it's on Xbox One and PS4. It's phenomenal. The story is great. There's so much stuff to do. What this really gets hate for, and I don't know, I think it's well received, but I think if it gets hate, it's hate for the Batmobile. I disagree. I think the Batmobile is... We talked about GTA, how they added the 3 characters and what games can do in sequels to add things. That's what it needed. Do you have to use it too much? Maybe. And you have to use it an equal amount, I would say, but for some people that's too much, and I can understand that. It didn't bother me. There were some times I got annoyed, but then I didn't have to use it for a while, so... Other than that, it handles really well. It's really the fact that the Batmobile in this game turns into a tank for certain combat, and that's, I think, odd for some people. Driving it, perfection.
Well, this came out
Gadgets
after
perfection.
this came out after the Nolan Batman movies, did it not?
Yes.
So then it being a tank really is
Yeah.
more accurate.
Well, I mean, like, it literally shifted into tank controls kind of thing.
okay.
I don't know. But the controls are perfect for it, so that's where I don't hurt it, because it... People that say, okay, you shouldn't be playing a tank, you should be playing the Batmobile and always in motion. Fine,
Sure.
then you win. But if you fault the controls when you are the tank, it's perfection. Like, no issues at all, and it's actually very good. The next game, while we're on the Warner Brothers topic here, Mad Max, which was based on the, I guess, reboot movie launch of Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
Also made by Warner Brothers. It's basically... Oh, I should know, Arkham Knight was Rocksteady again after they had switched back to, I think, Eidos Montreal. This is one that was made very similar to the Batman style of fighting and combat. This uses cars. Actually, you could say this uses cars better than the Batmobile for the people that didn't want to use a tank control. So, that's something to note. Really good game. Game I didn't get to try until it was on the Game Pass, which is this now. But I 100% of the game because it was so good. handles just like Batman, like I said, and Shadow of War and Mordor for combat, which actually works really well for Mad Max.
Okay. Next on the list is Until Dawn. Not really. There's not a lot of execution in this game. It's mostly a movie with decisions, which I think some people make fun of it for, but both of us really like this game.
It's funny because all the things I would probably not like about a Telltale game are here, I think. But for some reason I like this game. I don't... Maybe because it's not the graphics. I mean, honestly, the graphics are very good.
Yeah.
And Telltale is just a style I didn't love graphically.
Yeah, they all kind of have that cel-shaded with, like, dark black lines.
Yeah. Well, and cel-shaded is something that I am very picky on. I usually don't like it. I'll give you two examples, one later, one now. One now is Jet Set Radio. Mm-hmm. And later I'll bring up when we get to that.
Okay. But we both like this game. It's not really notable other than that. It's just a solid game.
See, it's not... I don't know if I would say it's worth $60.
Yeah.
But it was a great game. It's a one playthrough, and there's no reason to go back to it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it does what it needs to.
Okay. After that, we have Super Mario Maker. It's really hard to talk about this game because there is no single-player mode. It's literally just whatever people make.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, everyone's experience with this game is different. However, the conceptually, really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great game to own because you can always go back to it and get new stuff. So
would you say it's like Minecraft of...
Yeah.
Like the concept of Minecraft in Mario, which is really good.
Yeah, so I really like this game. But again, not much to say. Every person's experience with this game is going to be 100% different.
Yeah, you could take, for example, what you randomly find, or if you're a person who's out there on Twitter or social media or anything, or Reddit, looking for levels,
yeah,
you're going to have a totally different experience versus what you may randomly come across.
Next on the list is Undertale. This game, man, I love this game, first of all. I'm one of those people who like it. Not that that's uncommon. A lot of people really like this game, but I like this game to the point where since this game came out, most games that I played at some point, I think about like how is this game compared to Undertale? Mm-hmm. Where it's a little bit weird to say that because it's kind of unique, so it's not really normal compared to Undertale, but it was more like Undertale was just kind of like, a game can follow this story, or a game can it can look at things this way, and it was like, oh, you're right, it can. Mm-hmm. And so moving forward, I just thought about games differently, where it's like things don't always have to be done this way or that way. And so yeah, it's as unique of a game as it is, or well, different I should say, maybe, because it's not really unique. It's a turn-based RPG, but as different and out of the box as it is, it really it forces me to compare every game I played since then to it,
which is really good. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Next on the list we have Fallout 4 because it's notable, not because either of us really like Fallout games.
I bought it. I've never played a Fallout game before this. I had friends or close friends that did, and this was the post-apocalyptic. This genre is the post-apocalyptic version of Skyrim. Mm-hmm. Same developer. So I bought it. I tried it. It just doesn't work for me. I got out of the tutorial and I just didn't really. Just wasn't my thing. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It's just not for me.
Okay. Next is Rise of the Tomb Raider, follow-up to Tomb Raider that we talked about earlier. Square Enix's second Tomb Raider. Basically just an all-around improvement on the first one.
Yeah, this is where they took the formula and tweaked it just enough where I think they had it exactly where it needs to be. I don't think you could really add too much to it at this point, besides story and puzzles. And I think even you say at some point, because we both finished this, mm-hmm. but it's creepy at some point. I think wasn't that a big part of this one for you? It's
very, yeah,
in a good way, like not like jump scare only.
No, more just like, is what Laura thinks is happening actually what's happening?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, all right. Next on the list is Star Wars Battlefront, but not for the reasons that you guys might think. You actually wanted to talk about this game for positive reasons.
Yeah, this game probably gets forgotten because people are so focused on its upcoming sequel, but or its current sequel. This was a reboot again, or the first Battlefront since Battlefront 2, which was a long time ago. I don't have the year off the top of my head.
It's an Xbox One game.
Yeah. Or no, original Xbox.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah. So it skipped a generation to get here. It's a very good game. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how they didn't. If they had the marketing of the second game that's come out now, the sequel to this one, without the negative.
I think another maybe problem that it had was similar to Titanfall. People hadn't quite accepted yet that you could release
That's
just
true.
a pure multiplayer
Yeah.
game.
Well, and this game would have. I think that's a good point. The issue with this is Battlefront 2 had a lot of modes too. This didn't have. I would almost say this. My best example is the Sims scenario where Sims comes out and there's 15 expansions. You have all this stuff, and then Sims 2 comes out and it starts over again. And it's like, why don't they start out with the 15 expansions or the content again?
Yeah.
This is kind of what happened here. It's also
The original Xbox version had a lot to
there's
offer.
so much stuff. You could, like, the campaign. Like, there's a PvP campaign or PvE or PvP campaign mode where you would take over planets and stuff like that. It was kind of like a chess-based
Yeah.
board. Not really chess, I guess.
And this
but
one released just with like
just different modes.
literally 2 playlists, I think.
Yeah, it had fighter playlists, and then it had a couple first-person playlists.
Sure.
They were
Okay.
very good and very fun. The problem just was you couldn't put those into actual like rounds, like where you could capture areas. It was just the multiplayer maps, and that's it. But
Do you have a game of the year for 2015?
yep, that is hands down maybe one of the most unanimous Arkham Knight. I spent so much time in that game. And that game had a lot. That's maybe one of the best season passes. There
Okay,
ever was.
I want to talk about. There's more than one game on my top 10 for the whole thing this year.
This year.
But
And what's funny is, alternatively, you can go ahead because I don't have much to say. I don't have one this year.
Okay.
Partially because of my rules.
So for me, there's multiple games that make my final list on here, but I will say, I have to go with Undertale. It's just, I feel bad for the one that I'm not giving it to, but I would pick Undertale over it 10 times out of 10. It's just that the other one that I'm not mentioning, I would pick 10 times out of 10 over a lot of other games, just not Undertale. Okay, we'll move on. 2016. First game on the list.
Starts off with a bang.
We have Dexter Slice, the only mobile game that made the list.
Literally. That's technically not true.
We're going to leave this one as an
Right.
Easter egg. If you want to know more, Google it.
Yeah.
Dexter Slice, mobile game extraordinaire.
If you follow us in the future,
This will not be the last time you hear about
Yeah.
Dexter Slice. The next game on my list here is Stardew Valley. I don't really know what to say. It's kind of like Mario Maker to me, where it's kind of the game is whatever you make it. So there's can't really be super detailed. I'll just say it kind of took the whole Animal Crossing Harvest Moon genre and put an indie spin on it, but also kind of was like the modern version. At this time, Harvest Moon wasn't really mainstream anymore, and Animal Crossing was still making games, but they were on the DS, so again, I don't own a portable system. So for me, Stardew Valley was like the first time I got to play this genre in a long time, and it was a very good version, so I really enjoyed it. The next on the list, a game that both of us are a huge fan of, Hitman. I put 2016 because it's called Hitman.
yeah, it's this one is hard because it doesn't count as a reboot. I don't think it definitely doesn't because the story doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's a return to. We talked about Hitman Absolution. This goes back to Blood Money as far as quality. This was Hitman episodic.
Yeah, so
So-
Hitman, up until, I believe there was 4 games before Absolution.
Yeah, I think so.
Up until then, it was literally each level was kind of a standalone.
Yeah, there was no story mode.
Yeah, you're just on.
There
these
was,
are
the story mode kind of, I don't know if Carmen Sandiego was the right thing, but the story mode was kind of like you get a debrief and they would like verbally and text catch you up on what was happening behind
Yeah.
the scenes. And there was maybe cutscenes in between the missions sometimes, but then they were just missions.
It was mostly you're hired to kill this guy. These are the rules that you have to follow.
Yeah.
Good
and
luck.
That's it. And there was always, in an Assassin's Creed kind of way, an underlying thing going on.
Yeah.
You had to dig for that.
And
Absolution was the story.
They tried to
linear.
expand on that, make it into a story, more linear game. Some people did not like that, including me.
Yeah.
This was like, we're just gonna go back to what works.
This
and
is
man,
just missions with cutscenes in between, but
and man, did they just exactly hit it? They just nailed it.
It's perfect. It's literally perfect. The only hindrance this game will have now is running out of ideas for levels, and I don't think they should have that problem.
I think this problem suffered from the way they originally released it, which was you could only buy one level at a time.
That's what it's a great game, but episodic did hurt it, in my opinion.
It hurt the sales for sure.
And like I said about Revelations, it was once a week. I don't think this was that often.
Nowadays, if you go on your Xbox Live store or your PlayStation store, you can buy the whole thing all in one.
Yeah, so you won't have that.
But at the time, it was very annoying.
Yeah, I got this when it came out, so I only had 1 or 2 missions or episodes, and there's 5 or 6 total. I think there's 5. And it was agony to wait for the other ones.
And I mean, I think that's obvious that they know that, because then Hitman, the follow-up to this, Hitman 2...
It's not like the same.
Not the original Hitman 2, but the new Hitman 2, they just released them all right away.
Yeah, the sequel to this game, you not only... Actually, I don't know the cost because I already own both, and that might have been kind of not... What we talked about, not having to rebuy games. It might be because I own the first one, this one, that I didn't have to buy it, but when I got Hitman 2, the sequel to this, I now have both again on the same format, and I don't know. That might have been a deal, I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll move on. Next one on the list is Uncharted 4. It's more on here because it's notable.
It's the first one of PS4.
PS4,
it's the reason I've played Uncharted, because...
Yeah, because we played the collection leading up to this coming out.
Yep.
This game looks incredible. It's probably like the best movie game that you can buy, in the sense that, man, it's a really high quality, well made game that looks good, the story is good, the acting's good, but I still don't think Naughty Dog nails it in combat, and for that reason,
combat didn't feel different. Their combat is really, like we said, same thing over and over again, not super inventive, and I like what I would call combat similarities between this and the Batman games, the Arkham games.
Mm-hmm.
If you just mash the same thing over and over in both, that's all Uncharted kind of is. You can be successful in Batman. In Batman, you can make some really flashy, interesting combinations of attacks and fights. This, you're limited in, and that's really where Uncharted loses me.
Okay. I don't want to talk about it anymore, unless you do.
No.
Next on the list is Valhalla. This is indie kind of visual novel, but there's a little more gameplay than typically in a visual novel. I put it in the list because I really like the music in this game and the art style. If you like that kind of thing, you might like it. It is low on gameplay, so you might not like it, but I considered it good enough to mention as notable. The next one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan.
Yeah, I don't think it was digital only, but so it's not an arcade only, but it's notable in the fact that this is the second Ninja Turtles game I want to bring up, which in my younger days are huge for me. They tried to do a similar thing where you play through levels, there's a boss at the end. Visually, it's cool. That's about where it ends.
Okay.
It looks very good, but the game that I previously mentioned, Out of the Shadows, blows this away, and that didn't get the spotlight that this did, and they both suffer. Unfortunately, neither of the games I think you can buy at all anymore because of licensing.
Next on the list, actually, I lied earlier. There's 2 mobile games.
This one,
maybe a little. You've probably heard of this one, unlike the other one. This one's Pokemon Go. We don't have anything to say about it at all, but obviously notable because it was, a global phenomenon. Like, everyone's played this game, so worth mentioning. On the list after that, similar in nature, Overwatch. Very, very, very popular game, but I don't believe either of us played any longer.
No, I played it a decent amount. At the beginning,
it's a fun game. I don't think it's weird that people still play it. It's good, but I don't personally still play it. Next one on the list is I included this because this is one of the PlayStation 5 games that or 4 games that I haven't gotten to play because I don't have one and it's an exclusive. It's Persona 5. I really want to play this game. Everything about it looks like exactly the kind of game I want to play. And people when they've recommended games to me in the past, I've enjoyed them, have recommended this game to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to play it. But right now, it's PlayStation 4 only, and buying a PlayStation 4 within a year of the PlayStation 5 coming out just feels not smart or fiscally responsible. So hopefully next year, they're actually relaunching a new version of this Persona 5 Royale with extended content this year for PlayStation 4. So the good news is when the PlayStation 5 does come out, I won't have to buy twice to get the extra content. I can just buy the Royale version, and
that's going to be the way to go. I don't have the same example, but I am serious where I went through the same, you would think it's weird, but went through the same struggle with PlayStation 3. I wanted to buy that for a different reason because of the one thing I will give is that Xbox 360 did not have a Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
Which is still weird. I don't forget that, but it didn't. I almost bought a PlayStation 3 several times near the end of its life for that reason alone. And I just had to tough it out until the next generations came out.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to playing this game when PlayStation 5 comes out, but until then, unfortunately, I can't. And from what I've heard, it's highly likely it would even make my top 10 list if I could play it now, but I just can't. Next up on the list is Final Fantasy 15. For me, personally, this is the worst Final Fantasy game ever made. I mean, well, I guess if you count some spin-offs like Final Fantasy Adventure on the Super Nintendo, which was not a Final Fantasy game. Well, it was. It was not worth going into. I don't want to get too far off topic. I really don't like this game. It really just... It was a game made to sell to people who don't like the old Final Fantasies, but...
I will say, the only thing I have to say about it, because if you're not going to hear from me on these, and you may think it's a weird lore for me, I've never played any Final Fantasy games, ever. So that's why I have no feedback, but also weird because this should have appealed to me then, if they succeeded.
Yeah, they got rid of turn-based combat. It's all open world, like monsters are monsters that you can see as you're walking up to them. But the combat is just really bad. The story's kind of weird. I don't want to go into this because I could talk about it for a long time. To be fair to the game, I did never beat it. I got about 20-25 hours in before I just got to this point with it where I just felt like I was like, it hasn't grabbed me yet, and I feel like it should by now. Yeah. And so I just finally just gave up on it.
Which that's a pretty good amount of time into it.
I've heard that the version with all the DLC attached is actually good, but maybe someday. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm not going to play it. Next up on the list is Watch Dogs 2. This actually was critically acclaimed compared to the first one. They said it was significantly better.
Yeah, we don't have to spend much time on it besides that. It's just mentioning also that we didn't get it. Yeah. I didn't get it, and I had the first one and beat the first one. My other thing I really want to mention is, I mentioned the first one seemed to get delayed and take forever to come out, and then all of a sudden, here's the second one out.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know. So that was part of the reason I didn't get it. It wasn't that I was a hater on it. It was just that I wasn't prepared for this game to be out already.
I was kind of burned out from the first one. I was like, the first one was so bad. Why did they even make a sequel?
Yeah.
And then it got well-reviewed, but... It also came out right around Final Fantasy 15, which I was looking forward to playing and did plan to and did play for a good amount of time, but yeah, they came out around in the same Christmas season. So yeah. Gears of War 4 is next on the list. I have not played this game.
Yeah, so this is hard for me because I love the series up to this point. Up to this point, I would have said the second one was my least favorite game if I count campaign type stuff. Gears of War 4, I committed to playing through this with a co-op partner who started getting less video game time in around this time as well. So we just never finished it, and I think that was the problem. I decided I was going to always play this with somebody else, and because that other person wasn't always able to play, or very rarely was, I just didn't get a lot of playtime. I don't think it was bad. I don't know.
Kind of like the reverse of me and LA Noir,
Yeah.
where I really enjoyed it probably more than it is a good game because of playing it with my brother.
Yeah, where this is, like, we had a good first half of the game we beat right away.
Yeah.
And I was having fun. And then we stopped and didn't play it again for maybe 6 months to a year. Which, for this kind of game, when they're not super long stories, was too long. And we did another chapter, and I think we're maybe on the last chapter. But I don't have the feel that I want to. When we did the second comeback, it was like, all I want to do is finish the game, and I wasn't interested in actually the gameplay anymore, and that was the problem. Next on the list is also a new genre, or new IP, I guess, is The Division. And that was similar to what I was saying about Watch Dogs. I was super hyped for it. And visually it looked really good, and they had some dorky promos where they had people talking to each other.
Yeah,
but I mean, I could see the coolness behind what they were trying to do. But when it came out,
this was the first E3 presentation where, because this happens a lot nowadays, where they were very clearly trying to like imitate what they think it sounds like when four people are playing together online, and it was very it was very funny.
But the game is visually very good. This was one where they didn't have a great end game to start with, and because it is now what you'd call a looter shooter, but also has attributes of like MMOs in general, where you have to have something to do at max level that brings replayability back. I played through the campaign or the story and leveled up to the max, and then there wasn't a whole lot going on after that right away. It changed, and we even talked about, I think it's the survival mode. Some modes that are very popular, and that mode especially is very cool. But for me personally,
it didn't get added
way
till
too
a year
late.
later. Yeah.
So that's really all I want to talk about with that one.
Okay, next on the list, Darkest Dungeon. I can't really think of a game I would compare this to. It's just a cool indie game where you grind dungeons for loot, and it's kind of like a character management system where you have to like recruit new members, keep your members that you have sane, or it's got permadeath, so you have to replace them with recruited members.
I really like permadeath.
And so, yeah, it's just a really cool game. I don't really have much else to say about it. The next one on the list is Street Fighter V, which, similar to some of the other things we've talked about, or maybe just a trend in gaming in general now, was considered very unfinished when it first came out, but we still had a lot of fun with it Season 1, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for me, since Mortal Kombat 9, I've been trying to be more competitive or increase my skills in fighting games, and what we didn't talk about in Mortal Kombat 9 is Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom came out later, and that's when we got it, and I wanted to say, okay, I got good at Mortal Kombat 9, can I do that with both Street Fighter and Marvel games? And I think I did better with that with Street Fighter V. I just didn't. They suffered from what we talked about earlier also, is where NRS changed the game with what content you should have in the game when it comes to story and options, and this was severely lacking with that.
Yeah, what they offered was unacceptable in 2016. Like, at that point, the NRS had released 2 games with full, like, movie-level stories.
And they had been improving their online, even. That's another thing. At this point in the decade, internet connection or netcode was terrible still for them, and it was not terrible still for...
Well, they've even improved it since when this game came out, and it's still not up to the level of what the good netcode games out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not on our list, but I think a year prior, Mortal Kombat X had come out, and that was when they really... This is the third game in, mind you, but they had improved the netcode quite a bit within the game's life.
Yeah.
This should have been closer to that.
And it's still not as good as that. Even after they've redone the netcode. Since Street Fighter V has redone the netcode since it came out, and it's still not as good as those games.
Yeah, and with a game where you could only really get something from it, at least for what I was looking for, by playing people online or playing people...
Well, that was all that was in the game at that time. It was literally...
That's what stopped me.
You can only play versus mode, and our netcode sucks, so unless your friend comes over... And we played locally at, a handful of times, and we had fun when we did that. But other than that, there's literally nothing to do with that game back then. Alright, so that's it for 2016. Do you have Not counting Dexter Slice, do you have a game of the year for 2016?
Yes, since that one's rolled out, I have Hitman. Um, Kind of cheating my. Well, this is not my list anyways for the decade, but um, Hitman isn't really a sequel. It's a reboot kind of, but it's a.
I actually am going to agree with you. I would also say Hitman. I do you want to put in the caveat that Persona 5, I really strongly believe from everything I've heard and the way the music from the game, because I actually do listen to that game's soundtrack even though I've never played it, and from the people that recommended the game to me and what I know about their tastes, I feel like that has a strong possibility of being my first choice if and when I do get to play it. But for now, Hitman is easy. Easy number one. Okay. We'll move on. 2017. The first game on the list is actually Resident Evil 7. Man, I'm very excited to talk about this game.
This, actually, I might be wrong. Feeling-wise, 2017 feels like the best year for me for how much I enjoyed games that year. But that's because it started off so strong. And Resident Evil 7 is... I remember being scared because... So let's say... explain this first. Resident Evil 7 is not only a return to survival horror, but they changed it because it's the 3D world. It's not fixed cameras, which the old Resident Evils were.
Mm-hmm.
But if they still achieved survival horror for the first time since being in fixed cameras, and it was now first person as well. And I actually prefer third person games for some reason. Especially when I'm not creating my own character.
Yeah, me too.
And I actually was leery about this, but I saw some positives even before the game came out, and they were fulfilled because first person is way more horrifying.
That's true.
When you can't quickly see behind you or to your peripherals even.
Yeah.
Where somebody's going to swing at you and you don't know they're there until you get hit versus the hand coming down if you're in third person. It's terrifying.
This game is so good. And it comes out of like a thing where it's like, I didn't believe. You know? It was like, can Capcom make a good Resident Evil anymore? And I wasn't sure.
And as I don't know if when MVCI came out, but Capcom had been on not a positive trend.
Yeah.
This was, to me, their beginning of their turnaround. Where
for non-fighting games, every game from including Resident Evil 7 and current, they've been actually just killing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, not much else to say here, but although I feel like we've already said a lot, just extremely good game, very scary.
Great replayability. Scary in the way it should be. Yes, there's jump scares, but there's mental scares. There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Great. I think it's a great music. And return to a lot of nostalgic things that they made work in this new system. Yeah. Like when it comes to herbs and stuff that would be like, why the heck would you take an herb for health? They made it work in a really good way. And yeah.
Next one on the list is Neo. Neither of us played Neo, actually, but I included it as notable because it just looks like it's a good game. I've heard good things about it. It's kind of a Souls-esque game that looks good. Haven't played it, unfortunately, but I wanted to include it because it's definitely a game that I would consider playing in the future. It looks really cool. And there is a sequel coming out soon. Maybe early next year, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway.
Yeah, that I'm interested in.
Next one on the list is Hollow Knight. This is... Do I want to make the claim? I think I do. I think this is the best indie Metroidvania game of the decade.
Indie especially,
It's super good. It's got Souls mechanics in the literal sense, in that when you die, you have to go back to the location to recover your currency. Other than that, I don't know that I would call it a Dark Souls game, other than that it is difficult. The boss fights are very difficult, and none of the trash monsters in the game are like ignorable. Like, you have to approach them in the correct way. When you get impatient because you've died to a boss a lot, it's very easy to want to rush, but if you don't pay attention to each trash mob and give it the respect it deserves, you'll die again, and then you're really screwed because you lost your souls. So
the Souls thing is...
In that way, it's very much like a Souls game, but it's just a really beautiful. I mean, the artwork in this game is amazing. It's just a really beautiful, cool Metroidvania game with good challenge, not too hard, but very hard. And this actually taught me about Souls games in a way that I didn't understand. I didn't understand why people would put themselves through Souls games. And I realized something about the mechanic is that it really does enforce like the one more try thing, because it's like you have to go get your souls anyway,
Right.
and then you're there and you're like,
got
well,
it.
I guess I'll try this boss one more time.
Yeah, that we're not there yet, but a game that came out the next year that was made by From. That's the only thing, is you don't have to regain your souls. And Bloodborne, that was the exact thing. It's like, okay, well,
I'm here anyway.
I'm all the way back here. I might as well.
So, yeah, Hollow Knight, great game, super good game. Next on the list, Breath of the Wild.
Man, I don't know that I can even talk about this game without being spoilers. for my personal list.
Yeah. This is a game that if you would have told me it existed, like back when Skyward Sword came out, I don't know if I would have believed it.
Yep.
And I might even have said it was bad.
Here's the thing, Skyward Sword. We had said I wanted to play that so bad, but the controls wouldn't allow for me to do it. And when this first was teased and it was cell shaded, also I was like, well, shit, I'm done. Like I'm probably not gonna like this one very much.
Well, and if you had told me, hey, there's a new Zelda game coming out and it's got 5 dungeons.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Maybe even 4, because Ganon's Castle, while you do have to or Hyrule Castle, even though you do have to climb to the top of it, it's not really like a dungeon.
It can be though. I would call it.
Okay, so if you said
depending on how you play the game, you could either get to it early on and if you know that. But like my first playthrough, it was a dungeon. The first time I went there, I went through the whole thing.
So there's 5 dungeons if you're kind to Hyrule Castle.
Yeah.
If you told me this ahead of time, 5 dungeon Zelda.
But it also depends on. I would agree with that as a longtime Zelda player, but the game introducing all of the shrines, as mini dungeons, is kind of for me definitely balanced out by that.
I mean, in the end, after having played it,
the
game is phenomenal. I really like it. I
didn't think anything would ever touch Ocarina of Time for favorite Zelda for me. I didn't think anything would ever compare, especially after Skyward Sword. But I like Twilight Princess, but that didn't touch Ocarina of Time for me. This game came along, and everything new that they did, I liked, and that's including weapon durability. I know some people may not like that, but it was something new, and I think it was a good thing to try. I'm not saying it should be in the next game even necessarily, which it probably will be, but you know what I mean. And I'll talk about this more because I'm going to have to. But I might have 500 hours in the game between different profiles to replay it again. Which I can't say I've done that with a lot of non-MMO type games.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay. We'll move on. The next game on the list is Nier Automata. This is a really good RPG game. A lot of people, this kind of has like the reputation that The Witcher has, where a lot of people just kind of look back on it as one of the better games of the generation. I don't think that's wrong. It only recently became available for people who don't have a PlayStation. Well, no, it's been on PC for quite a long time, but it's only recently become available to 360 players, or I'm sorry, Xbox One players. But yeah, if you are a Xbox One player and you haven't played this, definitely give it a try. A very good game. It's kind of weird in that to get the whole story, you need to beat it multiple times, and I'm not talking about multiple endings. I'm talking about it just doesn't give you the whole story until you beat it multiple times. But it sounds dumb, and it's similar to what I was saying just a moment ago. It sounds dumb in concept, but once you do it, it makes sense, and it's cool. Next on the list is Thimbleweed Park. If you don't know what this is, it's a game that's made by the people who made Maniac Mansion for the original Nintendo.
Which I always wanted to play, but I didn't play. I don't think ever.
This is basically the same exact genre of the game, and despite being on modern hardware, they made the graphics look exactly the same. it's the story is not related in any way. The characters aren't related in any way. It's just Maniac Mansion, but if you are detectives trying to solve a murder, and it's very good. The next game on the list is Injustice 2.
Injustice 2, just a couple points. One, the only non-NetherRealm game that's not brought up in this decade was Mortal Kombat X, and that was on purpose for me. Because after my wanting to play it competitively, that was the one that I played competitively, and I'm talking about even just ranked modes, the absolute least. Mortal Kombat X, I actually played their ESL, which was new for that game. I played in the ESL League 1 week, and then I never went back to it. So Injustice 2, I wanted to come back to that. The graphics are amazing in this game. The story gets even better. So they did some new formats with how the story played out, is based on choosing between two different people to play as for the story mode. And the other notable part is this is the first game where they did the live towers where you would get gear. And they introduced the gear system instead of just traditional skins. In past games, there would be your main costume and an alternate costume, and then depending on DLC, there might be third or fourth costumes for some characters. Mm-hmm. Well, with this game, there was skins, but they were really shaders outside of a couple premiere skins. And then most of how you made your character look different or your hero look different was the gear, which was an RNG a lot of times gained mechanic, or sometimes they were at rewards for towers. I don't know if I love that, and we'll talk about that more with the following game. But the gameplay itself, I thought was a lot of fun. There's a lot of hate out there for this one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was fun. The roster was really good. When you think of superheroes, because it was mostly Batman villains, which that's what you should do for DC.
Sure.
And the last thing I will say is, this is not just about this game, I should say this first. Mortal Kombat 9 on was when they started doing fighter packs or combat packs or whatever you want to call them. This is the first game that I think that really hurt me, because Ninja Turtles were the last. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were a character that were added, that were implemented in a really cool way, but they were the last the group added in the fighter pack near the end of the game's life. And I think that's a travesty, because I would have liked to play them for an entire game, and really they didn't get that much play time for me.
Sure. Yeah, and it's probably harder to get online matches at that time too.
Yeah. You're either getting people that have played it nonstop and are going to mop you, or you're rarely going to see somebody who just got the game and they're going to struggle with the same problem.
Okay. Next on the list is Splatoon 2. It's really just an overall... It's really Splatoon 1, but like with improvements all around and a new story. This is what I wanted to mention earlier when we talked about it, and I said I'll touch on the story later, which is that, yes, the story in Splatoon is long. Splatoon 2 is longer than the story in Splatoon 1, but to be completely honest with you, I had a hard time beating the story in this because I was so much more interested in playing multiplayer that I put it off for a very long time. Eventually, I did go back and beat it, but I never I never bought the expansion pass for that reason, because I was just like, do I really want to? Because they made an expansion that was story content, kind of. But I was like, it took me so long to beat the story in this because I enjoy every time I turn on the game, I just want to play multiplayer matches.
Well, and that's, for me, I didn't own the first one because Switch didn't exist back then. Was it just regular Wii? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It was Wii U.
It was Wii U?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this one I got with the same mindset. I'm only playing this to play with friends, like co-op, but multiplayer. And this is one thing, I'm not sliding the game. This is more something to bring up about Nintendo Switch, is it does really well for multiplayer if you can play locally, usually.
I'll mention this. This was patched later. This is now possible. But it is true.
Well, Switch struggles with online multiplayer.
Yes.
Period.
Over a year after the game came out, this was fixed, but it was true.
But you can't even play on the same system, right? That's true too.
The night
we got it, the intent was
for you to play on my copy together.
Yes. That
was not possible. It's still not possible. But
that to me is unique to this game, because that's one thing Nintendo usually does well.
Yeah.
But
also during Splatfests, you could not be on the same team on purpose.
Yeah, you couldn't queue together. We were having to do like synchronized countdowns.
Yeah.
Which still wouldn't always work. It was great fun when we got on, but that should never be a struggle.
You can now queue together.
which is a big deal. And that's so
But
alternatively.
that took over a year to get
Yeah.
fixed.
Which it's not unlike on a Switch game to have not the greatest matchmaking when it comes to partying or whatever you want to call it. Sounds like they at least did improve that. They did improve the same system thing, which
Okay.
is also a bummer.
Next on the list, Sonic Mania.
Really, so Sonic the Hedgehog 4 exists, and I haven't touched that in some fashion.
Yeah, I know that exists because I've heard other people talk about it. I've never even seen a screenshot of
Yeah.
it.
I've seen screenshots in like the Xbox store, but this is different. So that is what I thought. This is what I thought that would be. I should say. I wanted a 2D Sonic game again,
Yeah.
and this game delivered like crazy on that. Not only did they make a very good start to finish game, they made time trials fun for me in this.
Yeah,
game,
the time trials were super
where
fun.
I got competitive with it for a while. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think I don't never get to number 1, but I got in the top 10. I have it for Xbox and Switch, so I don't remember which was which, but
I don't think the Switch one is as competitive, but I definitely
I
top
think
10
that's
Chemical Zone for Sonic.
yeah, I'm sure now it's not close. But back then, that was fun. That was like shaving a second off was huge.
Yeah, you felt really good about it.
Yeah,
Man, that game was so much fun.
and it also had the ability to play as every character, which at this point in Sonic the Hedgehog's life, that's huge for me because I always feel like Knuckles. But Sonic's actually my least favorite character of who you can usually play. As soon as Tails existed, I thought he was cooler because he could kind of hover or glide.
Yeah,
Knuckles,
I
thought
do
was
think
cool.
Tails is cool conceptually, but playing him, and this isn't like a knock on the game. This is actually a comment on a single character and probably off topic, but his movement is too floaty. That's how I feel.
Yeah, in this game, that's true.
Yes.
I don't think it was like that in 2. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but Adventure is a whole other thing where they just took him out of the
Yeah.
Speedster gameplay and put him in a tank, but whatever.
Okay, moving on. Next thing we have on the list is Mario Rabbids, which is very interesting in that this game was leaked before it was announced.
Yeah.
And when it got leaked, all we really knew was that it was Mario and the Rabbids. That was it. And we saw some screenshots.
Which was a lot of like, who the F are the rabbits in general?
Yeah, for me, I was like...
to be side by side with Mario characters.
Yeah, I was like, this is so stupid. I really thought it was dumb. And a lot of people did. It was notoriously flamed when it got leaked. And then they showed it off at E3, and turns out it's XCOM, but with Mario characters. And I was
even
like...
if the rabbits are weird, their characters are very good in the game.
Yeah.
And fun to play.
I was watching it, and I was like, this actually looks like something I would like.
Yep.
And then, so when it came out, I bought it, and the rest is history. This game is phenomenal.
I literally mocked my friends. I mean, not necessarily my friends, but you got it. And I was making fun of the game to that point, and then I don't even remember exactly what changed me, and then I just bought it. And I was like, well, I'm an idiot, because this game is awesome. And I couldn't... Then I think I beat it faster than every...
I think you beat it really
before
quickly.
everybody else, because I
The
couldn't
only
stop
thing I'll
playing
say
it.
about this game is I bought the DLC pack because I liked it so much. And they released the Donkey Kong levels, which are supposedly like half the length of the entire original game.
Which is crazy.
And I've never played them.
I think... I haven't either, but I don't think I bought the pack. I can't remember.
Okay. Next up is Destiny 2. Did you want to say something about this?
Just... kind of like The Division, I like this more than The Division. It's just... Destiny 1 is not even on our list because that was a beat the campaign and I never touched that game again. This game, I was excited because this was the sequel and shouldn't have the struggles of Destiny 1 or The Division and have an end game. And it did at the beginning. It just... You ran out fast. So it's a good game. It's for a looter shooter, and I know that they're improving it and adding stuff to it even as of right now, obviously.
I have a couple indie games I'm going to bring up here without really talking about them because I'll tell you what they are, and that's really all you need to know. Doki Doki Literature Club is a visual novel that's also horror and has a really good story. Golf Story is a golf game, but with a story, like a campaign mode that's actually really good. And then A Hat in Time is basically a Mario 64 clone that successfully feels like you're playing a good version of Mario 64. So these are just 3 indie games that came out this year that I personally like. None of them are like top 10 material, but they're all worth noting. They're good games that came out this year. And then we also have in there Cuphead, which is technically an indie game, kind of, because I believe the name of the studio I don't recall, but I believe it's a very small studio, like less than 5 people. But it ended up being published by Microsoft, which is not small or indie in any way. And yeah, this game looks really good. The sounds really good. The music is cool.
It's got everything that I would want.
But
and
I'm not
hard,
I'm not a bullet hell player, and so I've never played it for that reason. It just I want to want it, but it's not my genre. It's not a genre that I like playing.
I anticipate that I will play it at some point. I just haven't yet.
But I've successfully avoided buying it and being disappointed because I feel like that's what would happen because I just don't like bullet hell games really. But everything else about the game looks phenomenal. Next up on the list is Assassin's Creed Origins.
Assassin's Creed Origins is just mentioned because even though 4 was very good, I think the story has kind of wrapped itself up to this point. So it's kind of a prequel, obviously with the origins of the title, but it's also a revamp of the system of Assassin's Creed where they made it. There's loot now, and in this game's case, I think that was a good choice. It's a little more RPG aspects, which everybody is. That's changed over the past decade, obviously as well. But now the known RPG is epics and loot and leveling and missions, and this game adding that in actually was really good for it.
Okay. Mario Odyssey is next on the list. New 3D Mario, well made.
Really good. I would say Super Mario 64 is so good, and kind of like Super Mario Sunshine. I didn't play Galaxy, but Sunshine. This is what Sunshine should have been. Obviously, they get the credit of how many years of technology have advanced, so that's part of it. But I actually wanted to collect the moons in this game.
I got up to like, oh man, I could go to the first side of the moon, but I couldn't go to the dark side of the moon yet.
And so that's another thing I didn't get.
I was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 400, I want to say that was. And then my nephew came over and deleted my save.
Which is, that's going to kill
And
me.
I liked the game enough that I beat it again and started working on it again. But then once I got to the moon again, I was just like, I don't want to do these levels over again. Because the moon levels are actually
it's hard,
not that easy.
And that's good. I think it's crazy to me that this came out in the same year that Breath of the Wild did because they're opposite ends of the year. But I think the quality is not that much worse than Breath of the Wild. It's just that one reeled me in more, and that's all there is to say. It's a good game.
I want to touch on Xenoblade Chronicles 2 real quick first.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good RPG. I kind of actually... this is actually a weird story. But I was waiting to move. I was between apartments. Well, I was moving into a house, and I hadn't closed on my house yet. But my lease had ended, so I was living at my parents' house when this game came out. And there's a character in this game that's like very obsessed with waifus, like in a very cringe way. And I actually I will be completely honest, I was like, man, I don't want my parents to like hear this character and think that this is like the kind of stuff that I play. And so I literally was like, I'll play it again when I move into my house. And then I just never got back to it. And now it's like, well, they're remaking Xenoblade Chronicles 1, so I'll wait till that comes out. I'll beat Xenoblade Chronicles, and I'll play Xenoblade Chronicles 2, even though similar to Final Fantasy, it's not the same characters.
Yeah. It's
not necessarily a linked story. But, I mean, right now, as many of you know, we're inundated with new games, because this fall is very strong.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know when I'll get to playing this game. I liked what I did play, but unfortunately, the waifu character is too much.
Yeah.
So, you had one other game that you want to talk about for this year.
Yeah, we already talked about Battlefront. This is just notable for a couple reasons. Battlefront 2 came out the end of the year, And it's mostly notable because of the press that it got. But I am going to do the opposite of what you might think. I did not hate on this game, and I probably overly defended it because of the amount of hate it was getting, so I was on the opposite side. This game is what I complained about Battlefront 1 relaunch or reboot having no options. This game has the options. And this game has a lot of content. And this game has a new system where you play as the hero character. So in Battlefront 1, it's a deathmatch. Your grunts, your stormtroopers, or your rebel soldiers, for the most part. And your weapons change, and that doesn't need to be detailed. But the point is, you get to play as the iconic hero characters. In Battlefront 1, you had to just find a token, and that was the character. And it was almost like a timer where it would tick down. And that was also your life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you died, then you went back to your normal grunt character. This game's hero mechanic, great ideas, because it was dependent on performance. And in-game, you would earn points that you would spend on some of the crazier units. So some of them being heroes, some of them being just like...
middle-level units. Yeah,
great
I think
concept.
the implementation of the heroes would have been great if you didn't have to, like, buy them to be able to pick them.
Yeah, that's... So then the problem... That, within the game, perfection, their system and their progression system outside of the game, not great. The one thing I do want to really make sure I make the point of is this game got a lot of heat for loot boxes, which they were bad in their beta, and that changed because of the feedback, which you got to give credit to a little bit. Whether you like,
well, at the time when they removed them, they said they were going to add them back later, but the truth is,
they never did.
It ended up never having those.
The
problem
game gets
is
a lot of hate for having terrible loot boxes and pay to win because of that, which is silly. But that we don't need to get into.
It ended up never being true.
Yeah, it got taken out in the
The problem is that the game was balanced around that, so progressing was very slow.
Yes.
And eventually I believe they did buff it, but not till much later.
The system is actually, if you go into it right now, the game is actually what I wouldn't. Perfect
if it would have released that way.
Yeah. The game
would have been
a
really strong game.
The system is really good. The progression is really good because it takes the RNG box aspect out of it. Even though you couldn't purchase those boxes, that was still the way it was, so you couldn't upgrade your character very easily. And it did make a huge difference if you had a epic carded hero versus just unlock the hero.
Yeah.
It was huge. So, I think the game got way too much hate far too long after it deserved it, and I think it turned into a very good game. And the actual gameplay is close to perfection for me. Okay. And that never got seen by a lot of people because of the press.
Well, it still sold like 10 plus million copies.
Yeah, that's true. It's Star Wars.
As much as people hated on it, it still did really well. All right, 2017. Do you have a game of the year?
I have. This is more difficult because of what came out this year. I definitely have to give it to Breath of the Wild, and I didn't cheap out. There's no honorable mention for me because it was unanimous Breath of the Wild. So while Resident Evil 7 is an amazing game, I didn't have a hard time choosing between the two because even though they're both really good, Breath of the Wild just destroys.
Yeah, I feel the same way. There's like a lot of games on here for this year where, man, there were other years where they would have won easily.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel bad, like, not talking about them. But Breath of the Wild just wins, and it's just not it's just not close.
Yeah.
I would choose it every time, but man, there are some other really good games this year, and games that easily could have won some of the weaker years.
Yeah.
Okay. 2018. First game we have on the list is Celeste. This game is the game that taught me how much I like playing high execution platforming. I used to think when I saw people play like I Want to Be the Guy or I Want to Be the Boshi or Super Meat Boy, I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why would you want to do this? But this game taught me, holy shit, it's actually really rewarding. It feels so good when you beat a screen that you've been stuck on for a long time. And like, it's like not that big of a deal when you die if the game just is like, all right, you get to try again like a millisecond later. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have to sit through a cutscene again. Boom, you're in the game instantly. It's almost like when you jumped and missed, you landed on the first platform of the screen because you're there that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just like, Man, this game is so good. It's so fun. The levels are really well designed. The gameplay is really cool and gets like they add like things like every major level, like every new zone, I guess you would call it, section of levels adds like, hey, now this mechanic exists.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
I
so
like
good.
that style a lot.
The graphics, they're pixelated, so they're not like what someone would call amazing graphics, but I love the way they look. The story is really good. The music is amazing. Really extremely good music. Including when you unlock hard mode, all the music is remixes of the old music, and the remixes are really good.
Mm-hmm.
So the game is incredible. It recently got free DLC of a whole new zone, which
Free
it just
deal.
came out this month in September, which is a packed month like we've talked about, so I haven't gone back and played it yet because it's probably going to take a while because I've heard it's harder, like harder than the hard mode,
Mm-hmm.
which means it's very hard. But I'm looking forward to it for sure. Next game on the list, Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is a game that got a lot of crap when it came out.
Yeah,
It's definitely improved a lot since it came out as well.
It's just, to me, it's the beginning of a new IP.
Yeah.
The fundamentals are there. The gameplay is there. What I should say about 2018 in general is, especially Sea of Thieves is a good time. When Sea of Thieves came out, I thought, man, I don't have a lot else to play right now. But if I reflect ahead of time on 2018 as a whole, so much came out that year.
Yeah.
That I don't even know how this is 2017 and 2018 are unbelievable combo to me. And Sea of Thieves, when that came out, I didn't have a ton of play. Because this our order here is pretty close to the release date. So this was in March. And it's made by Rare,
mm-hmm.
which made the original Donkey Kong Country games. And that was enough for me, because they've got a great track record in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it I'm trying to think if I had beta. I don't remember. I think I did get to play beta. And that's where I was really trying to tell people about it. Because it's like, this is actually really fun. The heat it got is that there's nothing to do. In general. And what that means is there's not, like, direction. Or there wasn't direction. The progression is there, but it's not very clearly identified. And
it was a little bit repetitive at that time, too, though.
Yeah, and especially at that time, it was, yeah.
Because, I mean, this game took you a long time to talk me into trying, and the end result is that I do like the game. However, doing a lot of the original modes feels very inefficient to doing the newer modes.
Yeah, they've done a great job of expanding upon it. The original Skull Forts, for example, is the only thing that I can think of that was still in the game when it first came out.
Yeah.
And that still feels good. But that's it. Nothing else feels good. Really what happened is when the game came out, it was do Skull Forts when they're up and level your reputations up. And that was it. And that was the problem. Leveling, when you max your reps, I don't know how people did it back then. What do you do after that? Like, there wasn't even really a point. It was just, that's what you did. But they've added a lot. They've added expansions, I guess you would call them, but not really. Patches or DLC. But the game's beautiful. Has really good music.
Yes.
Has really good physics.
Yes.
And the combat is actually really good.
Yes.
So it's a home run with all that. Now that they have content, that's what finished it.
Yeah. So I don't really have anything else to say here. I think this is one of those games where, unfortunately, like Marvel Heroes, the original launch of it really hurt it. Because if the version that exists today existed then, I think a lot of people would have tried
it. Got some good big streamer.
Yeah, notably it was a number one game
backing.
on Twitch for a while.
Yeah, and it actually, one thing I forgot to say is, it suffers or whatever you want to call it. It's way more fun with more people.
Yes,
it's not fun by yourself actually, very much at all, or it becomes. You want to be done a lot faster.
It's very dangerous playing by yourself.
It's a lot more stressful by yourself.
Yeah,
but exponentially, the more people that you have, like 2 people is so much more fun than 1, but 4 people is even more fun, like way more fun than 2. It's crazy how much more fun that gets, partially because of the different ship sizes you can use.
Okay. Next on the list, God of War.
This is another reboot, PS4 exclusive, obviously, because that's their thing. And the first God of War I've actually played, and very good game. It was legitimately, I don't know if it was Game of the Year, I can't remember for any of the award shows. It was
I think
in the
Game
running
Awards
for sure.
gave it Game Awards.
But it's got great music. It's got good visuals. Got great voice acting. The combat is really good, and the hardest difficulty rivals From Software's gameplay. So, very good.
Okay. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is actually one that you want to talk about as well.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I should do the next couple of these. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Bloodstained is made by the Symphony of the Night guy, basically, for Castlevania. And Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is the game that got kickstarted. And as part of the Kickstarter goals being achieved, he also added on Curse of the Moon, which is an 8-bit classic Castlevania game. And I think it was $10, if I remember right. If you didn't, probably get the Kickstarter.
Yeah, if you
deal.
had the Kickstarter, it was free.
But it's so good. I mean, if you think, how could a Nintendo game be good today? Because that's what the 8-bit is. I played through it as many times as you could to unlock everything or unlock the story quotes. And it's amazing to me how he made 8-bit combat feel good. And the moves feel good. And the different characters, you switch between characters on the fly.
Well, I just want to mention, I believe this was outsourced. He did not make it.
Oh,
he was working
okay.
on.
I didn't know that, actually.
He was working on Ritual of the Night still. But,
well, and that's even more impressive because it's very good. Like, it's weird because it's like, how do I recommend an 8-bit game today? But
don't worry, I'm about to. Soon.
But yeah, that's all I can say about that. The next game on the list I wanted on here as well. Might feel random when it comes to the genre. It's called Jurassic World Evolution. And it's really, if you like park building or just simulation games like SimCity, it's really the best way to define it is SimCity, but in Jurassic Park world. And that being said, if whatever you could be asking for in a game like that, it delivers on. And it's actually because of the camera mode in there, the graphics are insanely good. It actually looks like the movie if you take screenshots with something that looks decent. And they've done DLC twice, I think. I've 100% as much as I can in the game, and I have bought the DLC, and it's just very good.
Next on the list is Mario Tennis Aces. Just a solid tennis game, not much else to say. We both played it. We both like it. I don't really have much else to say.
Yeah, it's just people wanted Mario Tennis again, and I think it's the best one.
The gameplay is solid.
Yeah. It's what I said earlier about Splatoon, we had a day where we, for sure, at least one, where we played on the same system, co-op, or,
Yeah.
2v2, and absolute blast.
Yeah, good game. Next on the list, you might not think this is possible, but when I say literally, I mean literal in the traditional sense. Literally got derailed for an hour talking about the music in this game when we were prepping for the video. Octopath Traveler. Yeah, it's like Square calls it HD 2D. It's made to look like Super Nintendo game, but just with like really high quality.
Mm-hmm.
The art in this game I feel like it was a game made for me. Like, if they were like, hey, if we could, how do you want it to look? I'd be like this.
Yeah.
If they were like, how do you want the music to sound? I'd be like this. And they'd be like, well, how do you want the character customization to be? I'd be like, exactly like this. This game has like some flaws. Obviously, like the dungeon layouts are all samey.
Yeah, that's true.
But the major flaw for me, I talked about this when I reviewed it, but I'll talk about it now real quickly, is just that they added... So the game takes place, it's all 8 characters, they all have their individual stories, and then there's like a hidden side quest that leads to a final quest, or dungeon, you would probably say. It leads to a final dungeon. And I feel like the dungeon both by being hidden and by being like solidly 20 levels above every other piece of content in the
that's
game.
really actually I forget about that.
But, is like a huge mistake. I feel like players should be funneled here, and I feel like the difficulty should take place directly following the end difficulty of the 8 stories, because if you don't play this level, the story doesn't come across as nearly cohesive or as good as it does if you do play this chapter. And a lot of people didn't because it's hidden. And if you're not extremely online, you probably don't even know that it exists.
I think the problem I have with it is, was the level cap 80? Is that what it is? Or
It's
is
probably 100, but I haven't gotten there. It slows down.
The problem is
the monster level cap is like 55.
Yeah, well, that's right. I'm forgiving
Except
of a lot
for
of that
this
stuff.
final dungeon.
I agree with you, but even for me, I'm less harsh judging that, except for the gap in between what you have the ability to farm, and the level you should be at appropriately to do this content, and that really is my biggest flaw in the game. Which it's a phenomenal game, so it doesn't matter. And what I should say about the game is, this is not a game that I usually would play. And I have to be careful when I say that. It's not that I don't like the style. It's that when I was of the age when Super Nintendo, and even Nintendo, but Super Nintendo especially, was the thing, I didn't play these games. More because I didn't know they existed, or it's not like we had the internet today. Or
if I'm not mistaken, the only Square RPG you've played before this was Vagrant Story.
I think so. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. And that's PlayStation.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's more... Back when Super Nintendo came out, I couldn't just walk into a store and buy whatever game I wanted. Plus, we didn't have the internet. Plus, all kinds of things. So, this kind of RPG was not my strength. I didn't know much about them. Like you just said, Vagrant Story is my first one, and that's not quite the same anyways, obviously. Mm-hmm. And unlike I said about Mario Rabbids, where I kind of gave people grief, I was listening to conversations of people that own the game. And like, man, they're sure talking about this a lot, but I have to kind of just glaze over this because I have no idea what they're talking about. And then finally, I came to a point where I had some time in a gap of time to buy a game. And I looked into it a little bit. I even watched gameplay of it, and I'm like, I don't know if I like this on Twitch.
Yeah.
And then I got the game, and I literally feel like I played it for 80 hours straight.
Yeah, so just to wrap up my complaints, I feel like the final dungeon hides both the story tie together. It wraps up the story and is very integral to the story, in my opinion. And it contains the best song in the entire game that you don't hear anywhere else. It's only in the final dungeon. And to hide that from the majority of players is just a huge mistake, in my opinion. But otherwise, everything about this game, I just love it.
And that's what I would agree. Coming into it, not knowing the genre super well, or mainly not having the experience of playing all the other games in this kind of genre, it just is insanely good to me.
Next on the list is Monster Hunter World, which, yes, it did come out in January, so it's weird that it's here.
Yeah.
But neither of us played this game, so we kind of forgot about it. But it is another game in the Capcom Return to Form noteworthy section, where this game was really well received. By all accounts, it's an extremely good game. I don't know why I haven't played this game, because it seems... Well, I know why I haven't played it. It's because the PC version didn't come out till like 9 months later. And I don't have an Xbox One X, and my PC is actually quite new. So I prefer to play games like this that are very graphically intensive on PC. And so by the time it finally rolled around on the PC release, I just kind of had forgotten about it. Also, notably, even to this day, the PC version gets patches like 2 to 3 months later than the console version. So they're just kind of like, they don't give a fuck about the PC version, so I probably never will buy it. But it sounds, people that like it, love it. It sounds like it's cool to me. If it, in the future, when I actually do have the newest system, like when PlayStation 5 comes out, if they come out with another one, from what I've heard about this one, I definitely would consider giving it a try. Next one on the list is Spider-Man for PS4.
Yeah, this game, we're not here today to talk about comic books and Marvel in my life and stuff like that, but because of that, this game was going to be big for me. I have one negative thing to say about it, and that's the fact that it is a PS4 exclusive. That bothered the heck out of me, just because a lot of people aren't going to get to play this game that should have. But other than that, and that's not on the company itself, so when it comes to the actual game, this is the best Spider-Man game ever made, by far. It's the best, maybe one of the best Marvel games or superhero game. I don't think you could play. It's hard to say because I'm not trying to. A Thor game doesn't exist like this. I would love to play a game about Thor or
Yeah.
especially the X-Men, to where you have this much feel of you are playing the character. Before this, Spider-Man 2 was widely considered the best Spider-Man game, especially because of the web slinging mechanics.
Yeah.
This has phenomenal web slinging. This has I don't have a PS4 Pro, so again, I feel that's my. I wanted to buy that, but PS5 is coming out, kind of a thing. But even with a regular PlayStation 4, it looks really good. It's the combat does steal from Batman Arkham games, but that's the right choice. And the things that they change, aka countering in Batman, turned into dodging in Spider-Man, which fits Spider-Man, are perfect. And the combat to me in this type of game, especially for Spider-Man, is huge. And I mentioned this before. I like to be able to choreograph a cool looking fight and not use the same even combo or a couple specials over and over again. And this game allows you to get really creative with that, make some really cool clips. And it has a crazy good story, crazy good voice acting, a lot of good Easter eggs. It's got fun collectibles that aren't too tedious. I literally can't. The only bad thing I can say is not about the game. It's the exclusivity. I don't have another bad thing to say. They had, I think it's been all free deal. No, I don't remember how the cost. The DLC has been good with some free DLC as well.
Okay.
I can't clarify that well enough right now. And then, last thing I'll say is that they've added to it. They didn't have New Game Plus right away, so that was a negative. They added that pretty quickly on. They added a difficulty, and I already had a game on the hardest difficulty previously. And again, like I mentioned about God of War, it gets pretty hard, and that is a good thing to me when you have the option to play it at that level too.
All right, next on the list, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This came out at a bad time for both of us, I think, so we didn't play it. You played it a little bit?
Yeah, my bad time is two things. Spider-Man came out literally the same month, maybe within a week of each other. My kid was born the month before, so I actually had some free time, kind of, if that makes sense, from leave, but I had to choose between the two, and Spider-Man got the win there. And when I did go back, I've beaten this. I own it, I beat it, but we said Rise of the Tomb Raider is probably the best one of the new series.
Yeah.
This is definitely the worst one. And even some of the things I gave credit for Rise, where it was creepy in a different way, I feel like they recognized that and then took it the wrong direction, because then it just gets weird creepy in this one, where it's not the same.
Like, not what are you wearing creepy.
Right, yeah. But one thing this is the game that I think I need to point this out on the most. We talked about detective mode coming around this decade.
Mm-hmm.
This is the game where there is a click in the stick and it does like a pulse AoE around you where you can see hidden items, and I absolutely hate it because I feel like I have to press it every 5 seconds.
And then the second you press it, it's just like the room is completely solved. There is no puzzle. The puzzle is to press the button.
Just for finding hidden items, for finding like ammo or crafting things. I don't want to be in a black and white screen.
Yeah. Most
of the game. And yeah, that's I can't say enough about. I hope that changes because it hurts the beauty of their actual game. It's a pretty game.
The next on the list is Dragon Quest XI. I put this on here because this is when the 3D version came out. This is the PlayStation 4 release, PlayStation 4 exclusive release. It's also the game that I'm currently playing because it just came out on Switch as an expanded version. Technically speaking, this game came out earlier than this because it originally came out on 3DS as 2D version, but I feel like that this version is different enough that we can call it the official release of the Dragon Quest XI that I'm playing right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not far enough into this game to really give it a solid rating. I've played maybe like 6, maybe 7 hours of it. I like it, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know where it'll land yet. But we'll see. Promising. Definitely, so far, not a lot to dislike. Next on the list is Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
This is kind of like the first sequel to Assassin's Creed Origins, and better, definitely. Really good game, and it came out at a time when I shouldn't have had time to play it. I think with the other games we just mentioned, and just all around improvement on their new reimagining of like the loot and everything like that, and you can't so much content. The combat had changed in this series to kind of be more like God of War. Actually, I would say it's very similar to God of War. It's just not as cutscene and story driven in the same efficiency. That's the only thing that it doesn't have on God of War. So that's all.
Okay. Super Mario Party came out last year. Definitely, like, they kind of, like, realized, oh, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to our roots. Beyond that, I wouldn't say much because they kind of, like, it's not as fleshed out as it really should have been. But the concept is what it should be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about it in that way. Like, it's been a long time since we've made one that was like 1 through 3. We made one that's like 1, 2, 3, but we didn't really put enough effort into it to make it a great version, which is unfortunate because the concept is what I want, but the execution is
It's not. Yeah.
the effort's too low, and it's obvious the effort's
Yeah.
low.
I think they could have the maps. I'm glad they brought the board game maps back in the fashion that they did, but they are so much smaller than the old ones and so much more complex.
Yeah.
And there's only 3 or 4 of them.
Well, yeah, that too, what you just said. They made them more complex while making them smaller, so it feels like you're stepping on a space that's, like, doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I heard someone criticizing this game just this week for some reason. I don't know why. This is something I didn't know was true, but apparently is true, which is that the placement of the stars on the map is true random. And so if you roll a 10 and you get a star on like your next space, it can put it on a space
Oh yeah, you can get
right next to it, and you can get like multiple stars in one turn. That's not okay.
Yeah, that is weird. That is very strange, but it makes sense from what I've seen in the bit of it. It is the thing that's different about this game is if you have people come over, this is actually a great party game again. Where the previous one, if you play, one thing we didn't mention about the previous one is there was a side mode where you could do a classic board with amiibos. That actually was fun. It was just a square board game, but that was actually more like classic Mario Party. But if you played the Mario Party 10 with people over, it was not fun at all. Okay. This is actually returned to that form where, yes, the maps are a little bit small, and you'll run out of them because there's only a couple of them. It was actually a lot of fun. So the next game on the list, Red Dead Redemption 2, is it's weird for me because I think it's rivals Game of the Year material. It's, if not Game of the Year material for some people. It's a really good game. It's unbelievable to me. It's so big. It expands upon the previous one, which there only exists one other, but it dwarfs GTA 5 in size, which is a statement in and of itself. And the graphics, because GTA 5 was technically an Xbox 360 era game or PS3, the graphics are unbelievable in this game. It's maybe I don't know if it still is, but when it came out, it wasn't close, and for a while after, it's the best looking game that exists visually. But some people didn't like it. Some people, I think it was well liked overall, but some people, some names, big names that I thought would like it, that liked the other ones, didn't like it and didn't give it time because they felt it. They said it felt a little unresponsive in some of the controls.
Yeah,
I could see that, but I didn't.
There's a lot of input line complaints.
Yeah, and I think part of that stems because it starts off in the snow, which it's intended, and most people I saw didn't give it much.
I remember this game takes a long time to get out. I remember the first day that it came out, I actually came over here to play it together, and I was like, I'm gonna go home when the winter's over.
Yeah,
and it just kept going.
Yeah, especially the first time. It's short if you know to get through it, but first time when you're kind of experiencing everything, it's long, and that's a whole chapter of the game, and I think it's good. But when I played through it my second time, that part felt a lot better. So that's part of it. But I think the problem is when people get into the thawed area, the actual main area of the game that's not covered in snow, it doesn't feel as sluggish because it's purposely more sluggish to traipse through the snow and everything. But yeah, this game, unbelievably good. Like the story is so good. When I beat it, I immediately wanted to play through it again, which is weird for how long it is.
Okay. Next game on the list, Deltarune. This is a super short game because it's not a complete game, so I'm not really sure why I put it on the list. But notably, it's a follow-up. It's Toby Fox's follow-up to Undertale. It's really good for what it is, but it's more of a demo than a real game. But I'm really looking forward to when he does finish it, although it's very clear he doesn't know when that will be. But, yeah, just if you like Undertale, you'll like this. It's super good, but it's more of a demo. It's very short.
Mm-hmm.
The one after that on the list is Hitman 2. Hitman, similar to the Hitman we talked about earlier, it's really actually just that Hitman with more level. It's more of the same.
Sometimes I don't even know what they officially decided on. It's Hitman in 2016 was the reset kind of on the gameplay. Hitman 2, I think, is what it's officially called, but at some point it was even called like Season 2 because that's kind of what they're doing.
It is more like a Season 2. It's the same game. It's just more of it.
Yeah. New levels.
The levels are very good and fun.
If you like Hitman, if you truly like Hitman, this is what you want.
Yeah.
They could do this 10 more times, and this would be exactly what I want. Yeah. I don't need extra mechanics every time or anything like that. The game
it's because it's not about mechanics. It's kind of a physics game where it's like, granted, the physics aren't like physics in the way that they are in Breath of the Wild. They're like weapons and tools.
Yeah, I just don't think they can expand on like what you're able to do. In the game.
But it's like
graphics is it.
It's like the game's just like, here's a zone, use the existing tools, weapons, disguises, and how they work to your disposal to make the level different every time. And
every one of these,
you definitely can do that.
Every one of these two Hitmans has had home runs. I mean, I generally like most of the levels where, even in Blood Money, it was like there was at least one level I was not a big fan of.
Yeah.
Where these, I like all of them, but they have so many home runs. And that's what you want to see in a Hitman game as well. In Absolution, I can't name you one. I can name the one that's the best, but I don't think that's a great level. In Blood Money, it was the urban, or like the
Suburbia house. Yeah,
Suburbia.
I was thought you were gonna say the Angels and Demons part.
Well, that thematically is up there too.
That one's really good.
Yeah.
This is off topic, but there's some really good levels.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is because this does the same thing. I think this one, it might have been Hitman in 2016, but I think it's this one where they do have you go back to the suburbs.
Oh, okay.
And it's really good, and it's better than it's just what you'd want to see of a next generation version of that level.
Next on the list is Gris. This is an indie platformer. It's really actually more of an art game. It's not difficult in any way, although there are some interesting like mechanic adding as the game goes on. I would still describe it as being pretty easy, probably beatable in 1 or 2 sessions by anybody, but very good music, very pretty art, just like a really cool game. Return of the Obra Dinn I have on the list. I have not played this game, but I visually really like the way that it looks. Notably, it won at the Game Awards. It won Best Art Style over Octopath Traveler. But when I looked at it and saw how it looks and like stuff, I thought, man, that looks really cool. It's coming to Switch next month, and I'm definitely planning to try it then. I'm really looking forward to it. It's like a detective. You're a detective and you're trying to solve a mystery, and the art style is phenomenal. Even having not played it, I can tell. I'm looking forward to it. Last one on the list for this year is Smash Ultimate. Not much to say, just the newest Smash game. Generally an improvement on Smash 4.
Yeah. Cool unlock. Well, kind of. Cool story mode for each character. Or it's not really story, but play.
Oh. Yeah, I thought you were going to say something different. But the story mode I really do not like in this game, but that's not here nor there. I don't ever have to play it.
Oh yeah, I shouldn't say story. I mean, yeah. Oh my gosh, not that mode. The mode the classic mode where you play through, like, I like obviously this
what most fighters would call arcade mode.
Yeah.
Yes, that part's cool, and they do it cool where like the
last boss is
the order of the characters is thematic to the character that you're picking.
And so not everyone, but for me, Simon Belmont was added to this game, and another Castlevania character too. But Dracula's the last boss, and it's literally like a Dracula fight in Castlevania, for better or worse. I thought they did a really good job on that.
I mean, very easily, probably best roster that we'll ever see in a fighting
Yeah.
game ever.
Yeah.
Just because there's something for everyone. Even if you don't like some of them, there's so many that there's going to be someone that you think is cool. Do you have a game of the year for 2018?
Man, this one is... I wimped out big time on this one because not only do I have a hard time in some of the years with honorable mentions, and my last year was unanimous. This year, I have the hardest time being comfortable. Part of me wanted to do Red Dead Redemption 2 because I don't know if it's going to get scored elsewhere. But really what I have, that needs to be mentioned, and I don't know how I can't pick that, but it's either this way for me. It's either Red Dead Redemption 2 and then my honorable mentions are Spider-Man and Octopath, or those two have to tie for number one, and Red Dead Redemption is my honorable mention. I can't narrow it down better than that because it's such... This year
I
is
feel
so
bad
loaded for me.
not saying Octopath.
That's part of it too.
It would be my runner-up if not. I mean, the game is literally... What I mean is, I don't think it's the best game that was made in 2018, but I think it's the game that I liked the most that was made in 2018.
I think if you say best game in 2018, it's Red Dead Redemption 2.
Sure.
Like the most would be the other ones.
Yeah, for me, I think Celeste is the best game that was made in 2018. It's my game of the year.
Yeah.
But Octopath Traveler I probably liked personally a little bit more, slightly. It's very close even if you change that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Octopath Traveler just feels like they took a checklist that I made of what I wanted in the game and put it in there. So I feel bad not giving them credit for that.
Octopath definitely gets my surprise of the year.
But Celeste is just such a complete and awesome game that it has to be number one.
Yeah. All right, I think before we move on to 2019, we're going to take one more quick break. And then we'll come back with 2019, both current and then upcoming. And then our list.
Okay.